there's this desperate CPR being given by a doctor to Blackbird, and he's between life and death, and damn, he goes like that. He dies right in front of us all. And it was just this, having seen this incredible focus of energy and attention and care to rescue this casualty under the most complicated circumstances.
If you pick up the Times this morning or read on the website, there is another extraordinary dispatch in Ukraine from special correspondent Anthony Loyd and chief news photographer Jack Hill. They describe the rescue of a severely wounded Ukrainian soldier in Donbass using a rescue robot. It's a window into the reality of the war in Ukraine, and it comes as another round of diplomacy on Ukraine starts today in Geneva. Well, Anthony Loyd is just back from Ukraine and joins us now. Good morning.
Hello, Kate.
What is your perception of the morale on the front line and in the country more broadly? We've spoken a lot on the programme today about the impact of Russian strikes on Ukrainian infrastructure, which is meaning that people don't have power, they don't have electricity. What is morale like there?
It's a very good question. Ukrainians speak with different voices as to the future of war and the possibilities of peace. There's no doubt about that. Most fully understand the significance of the Donbass area in the east of the country, which remains the main focus of the Kremlin's war aims. Ukrainians are aware that there have been demands that if they cede that territory to Russia, a peace deal of types may or may not be possible. And I think that most of them, nevertheless, are very wary of seeing that ground given up, even as they endure a terrible winter with strikes on their energy infrastructure, a lack of electricity, a lack of heating, often a lack of water. I think most Ukrainians have geared themselves to the concept of a long war. Now, people might say, well, the war is long already. It's entering its fifth year on February the 24th. But I think the national psychology is of one largely of resilience and endurance. They don't expect perhaps a quick fix solution, and they think this conflict might go on for a lot longer yet. Now, that's not to say that they want the conflict to go on for longer or that they don't really want peace, but they see that it's better to fight a longer war than to have a disadvantageous peace pushed upon them that might result in another round of conflict very soon. I think as a generalisation, that fits.
That's really interesting, because would that then mean that, given President Zelensky seems to be open to this idea of at least a demilitarised zone in some of those regions that Russia wants to claim as its own territory, and he's linking that to an election process, which is something we know that the Americans, Donald Trump, is requesting, would it be likely that he wouldn't have the support of the country in any election that was based on that prospect?
No, I think he's been quite honest. I mean, he said, yes, we could do elections. We would need some time and certainly a ceasefire in order for those elections to happen. And he's thrown back at Russia as well lines like, oh, well, perhaps, you know, if we have a ceasefire, you might like elections too. As to whether the Donbass potentially could become a kind of economic zone, demilitarized, that would have to be open to a national referendum, which he's also mooted. And I think it's always difficult to predict what would happen in a referendum. But I think, as I say, that most Ukrainians are very aware that if they gave up a fortress belt of their own territory that they fought so hard to defend, that it would leave them open to future aggression without a really clear security guarantee. And they don't think that security guarantee is quite being offered as it should be. So let us see. I can't see elections happening announced on February the 24th to happen in May or something like that. I think it'd be way too complicated, particularly in the absence of a really concrete ceasefire. And I don't think Russia would give that ceasefire at this stage in the war.
And can we talk about your piece, which, you know, we've both read here. We would urge anybody to read it. It really is a remarkable read. But it describes the rescue of a drone pilot. His code name is Blackbird. But just describe to us what you saw. What was that like? It sounds remarkable.
So it started off in a fairly innocuous way. I was in an operations room in a city called Kramatorsk, which is in the Donbass and part of the fortress belt. I was in an operations room belonging to a drone company attached to the 93rd Brigade of the Ukrainian army. And I was talking with some of the soldiers. They were infantry soldiers, but they were drone specialists. And we were kind of yakking away in a fairly relaxed way when suddenly the tone of voices changed around me, and I realized that just behind me there was a drone pilot of an unmanned robot. Now, these are ground drones, they're unmanned, as their name suggests, And this drone pilot had been given a mission. One of their own guys, not someone else, a soldier codenamed Blackbird, had been badly wounded in the grey zone. The grey zone is now a term used to describe a belt of territory between about 5 and 10 kilometres wide. The front's not a contiguous zone of standing off trenches anymore. It's this kind of amorphous zone of scattered dugouts and infiltration by both sides. Very difficult to move anything there. Stretcher parties are not only targeted, they're kind of targets of choice. You can't get a mechanized vehicle up within about 5 kilometers, an armored vehicle, that'll be destroyed because the skies are so drone heavy. So this drone pilot in the room where I was sitting was tasked to get his ground drone, his robot, to the casualty and evacuate him using the robot. Now the casualty was miles away, a few miles away. Darkness was coming down, it's winter, the terrain's dreadful, snow and ice, the skies are filled with Russian drones, and there are mines too. The casualty was very badly injured, he'd lost one leg, the other was pretty wrecked, and he was in danger of losing his arm too. And you could see what was going on because the robot's got a camera with a live stream going straight to the pilot's laptop in front of me. So he's controlling this little robot drone. It's only about 5 foot long. It had wheels. It can go about 5 or 6 miles an hour, top speed, depending on terrain. So after some hours, they managed to get the drone to where the casualty is. And you can see a couple of other infantrymen coming out in their snowsuits, their weapons, and putting this poor, very seriously injured soldier on the back of the drone. He's got 3 tourniquets on. They've wrapped him in a sleeping bag. He's got no pain relief. They pilot the drone then back across about 10 miles of territory. And they finally get him to a stabilization point. Stabilization point basically means a forward position. It's underground. It's improvised. It's a big dugout, or in this case, basement, where there's some doctors and medics who try and stabilize the more seriously wounded. At that moment, I managed to get a vehicle there so I could see, what happened next. And there was hope that having got him that far, this guy Blackbird, this soldier, might have survived because he was in the hands of doctors. And, we drive, it's quite a dramatic drive through drone netting and past ruined houses. And in darkness, we get to this underground point. We rush in at the same time as some of Blackbird's colleagues, about his company commander, his platoon commander, and a couple of his friends. And there and then there's this desperate CPR being given by a doctor to Blackbird, and he's between life and death, and damn, he goes like that. He dies right in front of us all. And it was just this, having seen this incredible focus of energy and attention and care to rescue this casualty under the most complicated circumstances, and using such innovation, this robot drone and the focus of the pilot trying to get this drone to rescue him. It was his first casualty evacuation mission as well, the pilot, and to get him all the way back. And Blackbird's hung on quite a lonely journey, very badly wounded, alone in the snow for that length of time on a machine for 10 miles. And then to die like that, it felt like it was a terrible moment of implosion. It says a lot about the nature of the war. But yeah, it was quite a moment, quite a rescue, and so nearly worked out. Maybe another half hour. They got him there half hour early, maybe, but the cold, the blood loss, the shock carried him away.
I think it is an absolutely remarkable read. It does say a huge amount about resilience, about exactly what is happening on those front lines, about the future of war, and about actually just the humanity of it and the difficulties involved in it. And Anthony, it's something that everybody ought to read today. Thank you very much for giving us your time on the programme.
Thank you.
Anthony Loyd there, who's just back from Ukraine. And I would urge you to go and read that piece if you haven't already, some of the details in it. If you're interested in warfare, where things go from here, or the humanity involved in what is going on in Ukraine at the moment, it is very much worth your time.